Hey, everybody. This is Prompt and Circumstance. My name's David.
And I'm Ilan.
And today we're going to go over three important things that you ought to know when going from POCs to production for your AI agents.
All right, David. I've got an interesting one for you today while we enjoy maybe the coldest winter in the history of our area, at least in recent history.
So far. The coldest
far.
winter so far.
And, in this winter time means you're spending a lot of time inside trying stuff out. I found a really cool tutorial for building a competitive analysis agent. And so having gone through that tutorial and gone through some stumbling blocks myself, I learned some pretty important lessons on breaking down an agent into sub-agents, improving your prompts, and I wanted to share those today.
Sounds good. Sounds like that's something you can't do with a human. Can't break a human into subhumans.
That's right. Well, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
We'll see what OpenAI has been quiet lately. We'll see what they come up with next
See what
year.
the future holds.
This week's episode is brought to you by Querio. Have you ever found that your data team is bogged down in ad hoc questions from users, or that your product team can't quite get the answers that they're looking for out of the product? Querio's AI agent sits on top of your data stack and allows you to ask natural language questions to get the answers that you need immediately. Try it today by going to Querio.ai. Let them know that David and Ilan sent you for 2 months free of their Explorer product. It's $1,000 value. All right, David. So I've been playing around quite a lot in n8n. This is my preferred workflow and AI automation tool, both for personal use and at work. Right here, what we're seeing is a market research agent, which came out of a tutorial done by Pavel Hurin from Product Compass. And we'll link that in the show notes. And it seemed pretty cool, right? It grabs your competitors, it does some thinking, it goes to Perplexity to do some research, and then compiles all of this and then sends you an email at the end. So it all seems well and good. However, in my experience, when I used this agent, what I found was that it missed important competitor news. So, for example, one of the key competitors from my job, it missed a $100 million Series C raised by that competitor just a couple of days before. So
that's something that I suspect a human certainly wouldn't miss.
That's right. That's right. This led me to go down a rabbit hole of how to improve the agent's performance. And the first thing that I did was actually just go through the tool call. So this is a cool thing that you can do in n8n, which is when you have a session running, you can see what gets returned at each step, and you can analyze what the input and the response was from the agent. So what I ended up finding is that the agent was giving kind of like superficial requests to Perplexity. So it's like, okay, I got to get a little deeper and give it more specific types of news or types of information that I'm hoping to collect from my competitors. So the first lesson here is actually not about splitting agents, but it's actually about analyzing your logs and trying to understand where your agent went wrong. And it takes a little bit of research and time, but it's really worthwhile because it gives you that level of insight about what's going on.
A term that is mattering a lot these days, I'd say probably in the last 6 months or so, is observability and evals. And it sounds like this is right up that alley.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the reason that I really like n8n is that it has out-of-the-box observability. And when we're talking about observability, it's really that level of understanding of, hey, what happened during this LLM call? What got passed in? What got returned? What did the agent do with that information? What was its next step, etc. So you can really understand the step-by-step.
Yeah, being able to inspect, what otherwise would have been a multi-step process. Yeah.
That's right. And I also want to be careful here. I think this is something that sounds like it could be really on the engineering side, like, oh, I just hand this off to my engineering team and it's their job to look through the logs, right? But in the case of AI and agents, at least where we are today, I really think this falls into the realm of what the product team should be handling, because this all falls into the domain of what we can control as product managers. And we usually are the subject matter experts in what information should be returned from your agent. So an engineering team might not know that, hey, I was expecting to see a fundraising announcement from this competitor.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I did was make a much more specific system prompt. We're going to share this whole workflow with you. And so you'll be able to see that system prompt in detail. But basically, what the main change was instead of telling the agent, hey, you're a market research agent, come up with a good prompt for Perplexity to research competitors. Instead, we said, here are the types of information that we're looking for competitors. So go to Perplexity and search for these types of information for each of the competitors.
And is that something that has been incorporated into the system prompt? Where
That's right.
either you say, this is, okay, so it's like, here's the template that we're looking to fill.
That's right, exactly. So we're telling it that we want official news, product and partnerships, industry coverage, etc. So you would expect that each one of these becomes a call to Perplexity to search for that specific information for that competitor.
Got it.
And that's well and good, but you run into another problem. You end up hitting maximums or limits in n8n or in your LLM. So in this case, we hit 10 iterations on the Anthropic chat model, which is the default limit. You can increase that limit. You can make it 30 or 100, but then you run into a second problem, which is eventually your context grows and grows. So you make one call about one competitor to Perplexity, that gets updated in the Think tool. Then that context gets sent back to Anthropic, and then it makes another call to Perplexity, and it stacks up all of this context about your competitors. And eventually you hit a token limit in the chat model. So for example, Anthropic has a 10,000 token per second limit. So even if you have a longer context window, that's the maximum number of tokens you can call in a single second, at least on the tier of user that I am.
I'd imagine that also dramatically increases your costs too, right? I mean, this is not a one-time thing, it's a continuous thing. And so, with every incremental improvement that you can deploy onto here, it's going to scale significantly.
Yeah, it's a good point. To be honest, David, I wasn't really controlling for costs here, and was more focused on getting the result. The
Give me some money bags. Just, oh yeah, cost whatever. It's fine.
Cost whatever. I mean, it's a couple of dollars a week, so I was okay with that. But I agree with you. Longer term, that's really a consideration that you have to take into account, right? How much are you actually spending on wasted tokens? So the agent now has the ability to do all of the research that it needs to do, and it provides the depth of research that you're needing, but you're hitting limits in the tools that you're using. And of course, you can switch out the model. So that was my first step, was to switch to OpenAI instead. And that gave me slightly higher limits, but you still end up with more risk of hallucination because suddenly it's got cross context from different types of searches and it has too many jobs to do. This week's episode is also brought to you by n8n. Its beautiful UI allows any user to go in and experiment with building AI agents, but also create the types of workflows and evals that are required for production level agents. Try it today by visiting the link in our show notes and you'll get 2 weeks free. So then the next step, logically, was to separate into sub-agents. I have 3 things that I want to achieve. I want news about my competitor. I want to understand user sentiment, right? Are people complaining about them? Are people super happy about them? And then I want to synthesize all that information together and send off an email.
And is this part of the template, or this is where you started to create your own stuff here?
Starting here, this was where I started to branch off into my own work.
You forked his repo, you mean?
That's right. And another step that I took here is to split out some of the work that is deterministic away from the agent. So yeah, we can create agents now that have a bunch of tools in front of them. It could do a bunch of stuff with those tools. But in the case of a strict list of competitors that you want to research each time, there's no reason to make the LLM call that each time. Instead, in your workflow, you can just get the competitors from Google Sheets and aggregate them and then pass that into your agent, right? Like, let's take the deterministic step out of the agent's hand.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that in the frothy enthusiasm to deploy AI everywhere, people forget that um, the better route tends to be to do it in the classic way, and only then, when it gets too complex for the classic method, should we then fall back to a more probabilistic method using LLMs.
That's right. Or another way to put it is, where do you actually need thinking in the process? And let's focus on making the agents do the steps that require thinking. All right. So in my head, logically, I have two separate agents that I want to run simultaneously to do two different jobs at the same time. And then I want to synthesize their information and write an email. And this is what it looks like. Again, this will all be provided in the show notes. You can load this into your own n8n instance. But now we have a news researcher, and this only has two jobs to do for each competitor. And all it has to do is return a structured array of its findings.
I noticed that there's a little toggle there to say require specific output format. I suppose that's another way to go about that rather than doing it in the prompt.
Yeah, you can do that. What I've found is that just specifying the output format in your prompt is sufficient, because the next agent will just interpret whatever information it gets. This is important if, again, you need deterministically for the next step in your process. It must be a JSON with a specific format. It does require an additional tool to be added, which is why I find that it's simpler to just specify it in your system prompt.
Got it.
Meanwhile, we have a sentiment analysis. So this is actually only performing one search, and it's just trying to understand what user complaints or frustrations have existed in the past week for your list of competitors. So this seemed great. The problem you run into here is, it turns out n8n doesn't run things in parallel. n8n is a sequential tool. Each workflow is meant to run sequentially. And the way that it determines the sequence is based on your diagram. So it runs things left to right, top to bottom. So what ends up happening here is it ran up here to my news agent, ran the synthesis, then came back and ran the sentiment analysis. And yes, you could adjust this, but if you want to make sure that you always have the two sub-agents run before the synthesis, it seemed like too big of a risk to take to keep this going in production.
Yeah. So what did you do about that?
All right, so this is what I did about it, David. I sequenced the agents. If they're going to run sequentially anyway, they're not going to run in parallel, then what's the point of making a flow that looks like things are running in parallel? And so this is what it looks like at the end. This is actually running for me weekly now, looking for competitor news. And there's a couple other things that I did in here, but I'll pause for a second.
I noticed that you changed from OpenAI to Anthropic.
One of the benefits of building tools in an n8n is that you're not tied to a specific model. It takes about 10 seconds to switch out Anthropic for OpenAI. I can even show you right now how you would do that. You just remove the Anthropic model, choose a new chat model, go OpenAI instead. And then I already have my account, choose the model that I want, and there we go. We've switched out Anthropic for OpenAI. So easy way to test how each model performs for the tasks that you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you do need a paid subscription in either situation, right?
In all situations, you would need an API key from that model provider. So it's not a paid subscription, it's a funded API. So we have everything running in sequence here. This runs really well. The other change that I made was I made the synthesizer not an agent, but just an LLM call, because all it was doing was creating an email and then sending the email. And sending an email is, again, a deterministic step that can be taken. So all I really needed that step to do was to synthesize the data from the two agents previously.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now, this does run into a last problem, which is time. This takes quite a long time to run the example that I have here. This is just running on a list of 3 competitors, but if you have a list of like 30 or 40 different market players that you're trying to analyze week on week, the tool takes a long time to run, and you can still run into limits on each of the sub-agents who are trying to do multiple calls. So preview for a future episode, there are tricks that you can use in n8n to get tool calls to run in parallel and also to loop over data. So you're only passing one market player, one competitor at a time to sub-agents. We'll go over that another time, how to make that work.
That's for a deeper deep dive on
That's
n8n.
right. There'll be three important lessons for how to get sub-agents to run in parallel.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for walking us through this. I think, the entire setup of all of this is fairly straightforward, right? It was all point and click. You didn't need to know any kind of code. You had a good starting foundation, and it was just kind of tinkering with it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And tinkering is an important skill to have to be able to get agents to work. So just to summarize, the 3 key lessons here were: 1, use your logs to observe what's going on in your agent if you're not getting the results that you're looking for. The second one is if you're hitting limits in your agents or your LLMs, or you're dissatisfied with the performance of your agent because it's trying to do too many things, then it's time to split into sub-agents. And the third one is really consider when you need things to run in parallel or not. But at least in n8n, if your tools are going to run sequentially, then you might as well make your whole workflow sequential and accept that the time is going to be a little longer for each call.
Those are great lessons. And I think anybody who builds any kind of more sophisticated agent than just a little POC needs to take those into account.
All right. With that, that's all we got for you this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Are you looking for other information or tutorials about agents or AI? Let us know in the comments. Otherwise, give us a like, subscribe, send this to a friend who might enjoy it, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.